Hi, my name is Crystal Nelson. I'm an ergonomist at Alter Ergo, and today we're going to be talking about wrist positioning and why it matters, and especially if things aren't set just right, some tips and tricks about how to fix your setup. So if you're an office worker or maybe someone who works with a computer day in and day out, chances are you may have some feelings of discomfort or fatigue in your upper extremities. So your wrist, your elbow, and even sometimes your shoulder. These symptoms are caused by repetitive motions, awkward postures, and even excessive forces. Let's go back to basics with anatomy. Our arms are most comfortable in a neutral position. So that is our arms comfortably down by our sides, our elbows at a 90-degree angle, and our hands in a neutral position like we would be holding a cup of water. So let's say you move your wrist downward. This is called pronation, and this is called supination. So these put extra stresses on our tendons and ligaments in our forearms. And then wrist extension or wrist flexion can also cause additional stressors in our body. When we're typing, sometimes our wrists are in pronation, and if we're resting on a hard surface, then we end up being an extension. There are a lot of things that can happen to cause additional feelings of discomfort if you aren't set quite right. When your forearms are in an awkward position, sometimes that can cause your tendons and ligaments to kind of rub onto the bony parts of your wrist. When tendons and ligaments rub onto those aspects, sometimes inflammation can occur. So when you get inflammation, that compresses your nerves. So especially the median nerve that runs along your arm here, and tendons and ligaments can press on that, and that's where you start to experience symptoms of carpal tunnel or maybe some other hand pain as well, especially if you're going to involve the ulnar nerve, which is on the outside of your hand. Let's talk about some tips to improve your setup so you can decrease your risk of feelings of muscle fatigue or discomfort. Tip number one is make sure your keyboard and your mouse is placed correctly within your workspace. So make sure you check out the blog where we talk about how to position your office chair. You definitely want to do that first. Once you get your office chair set, then you look at your keyboard height. Your keyboard height should be an inch below your elbow height. The reason for that is so you can sit back in your chair fully supported with your elbows at 90 degrees, and then you can type with your fingers in a downward motion. If you have an ergonomic keyboard, your hands would be closer to that neutral position versus a standard keyboard where your hands would be pronated. Either way, try to avoid resting your wrist on any hard surface. If you have one of those wrist resting pads, you want to make sure that only the palm of your hand is resting on those pads, and avoid any pressure, even if it is from a wrist pad, to be pressing on the wrist of your arm here. So this area should be free floating, not touching any surface while your fingers are typing in that downward motion. So if you're an office worker, many times our natural habits are to put our keyboard directly in front of us, and then our mouse ends up being off to the side. Most frequently it's on the right hand side from my experience doing ergonomic assessments. So if I'm typing, great, that's in a neutral position. But if I'm mousing, all of a sudden I have to experience an extended reach to get to the mouse. For people who are doing computer work, oftentimes if they are experiencing pain or discomfort, it's on the side of their mouse because we're extending our reach to get to that mouse. So if you are mousing and typing equally, 50% of your workday is typing, 50% of your workday is mousing, then I do recommend moving your keyboard slightly over to the left and having your mouse on the right hand side so you don't have to reach as far for your mouse. It may feel kind of funny where you may end up typing a little bit on your left hand side, but then you end up mousing over here on your right. So at the end of the day, the amount that you're reaching over here to type and reaching over here to mouse is equal, versus in a neutral position for part of your day and then repeatedly off to your right hand side. So our bodies are going to want to go to old habits too. So if you do move your keyboard over to the left, sometimes you may just kind of scoot your chair over to the left, so you're now again in front of your keyboard. So try to be mindful of where your body is within that space to make sure you aren't accidentally correcting yourself in the wrong way. Another thing to consider is to make sure that your keyboard and your mouse is close to you versus further away. Once we have to reach further out for an item, it extends our reach. It puts pressure on our wrists when we're typing and when we're mousing. By having your keyboard and your mouse close to you, that reduces your risk of having an awkward posture and high forces to soft tissues of your arms. Another item to consider would be using a neutral position keyboard and mouse to help maintain that neutral position that we first talked about. So there are numerous types of keyboards and mice out there to help to improve the positioning of your hand. Definitely try them out before you buy them. There is a bit of a learning curve. There may be times when you get a new piece of equipment and it will feel awkward when you first start using the ergonomic keyboard or mouse. That's completely normal. Give it some time, even weeks of time, to get used to the new equipment. There are some keyboards that can slightly angle from a greater angle to a lesser angle, and with that you can gradually get into that more neutral position. There are mice that can do that as well. And last but not least, make sure you're doing stretches every hour as well. So find stretches that can extend your wrist back, flex your wrist down, supinate, pronate, do some fist pumps. All of those things are really good to keep your blood circulating and to reduce the repetitive positions and motions to the muscles, ligaments, and tendons to your upper extremities. If you are interested in more ergonomic tips and tricks, definitely follow our social media pages, visit our website for all the blogs that are included in some of the written information, and reach out to us if you have questions. We're happy to help you. Ergonomics is what we're passionate about, and helping you feel better is something that's even more exciting. Thanks for joining me.